Hey guys, welcome back to J&M Sports Talk. I'm Mark. This is Jonathan. We're back for another week of college football talk. We're jumping right into talking about games this week.
Yeah.
So we didn't have necessarily the marquee matchups last week, but we did have some really good games. It turned out.
Yep.
One of those being the Tennessee-Florida game. Jonathan, what were your thoughts from that game?
My thoughts were, there was two really good defenses on the field a lot of the game. I was really impressed with Tennessee. Moved the ball at times. Again, UF still struggled offensively, and we knew that was going to come out. But, I say as far as Tennessee goes, one of the shining moments I thought of the game was John Kelly being a beast again. He had 19 carries, had 141 yards rushing and a touchdown, as well as he had 6 receptions for another 96 yards. So he almost had 100 yards receiving on top of the 140 on the ground. With that being said, of course, everyone's talking about that big play at the end of the game. How did you think the game went?
Well, I mean, we knew the game was going to be close going in. We knew both defenses were really good. It was really how well the offenses were going to perform. And, Tennessee, they missed 3 field goals.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like Tennessee really should have won that ball game and that they let it slip away, not so much that Florida won the game. But, hey, got to give props to the freshman QB, Felipe Franks, tossing that Hail Mary pass for the touchdown. So huge momentum for Florida going into the season. You talk about starting the season 0-2, it would have been detrimental for them. I don't think they would have recovered. So it actually gives them momentum going into the Kentucky game this week. So surprising finish there, to say the least. Let's stay in the SEC. They had an out-of-conference matchup. Vanderbilt, Kansas State came into Nashville to play. How did you feel that one went, Jonathan?
We both thought this was going to be one of those toss-up games last week.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of what we expected. I thought it was a great defensive game. I was really impressed with how well Vanderbilt's defense slowed down and stopped Zach Ertz. They made him just about a non-factor in the game. That was the big reason why they won this game, was their ability to stop Zach Ertz, who is one of the great. He's probably the 5th or 6th best quarterback in the Big 12, and that's saying something. How good the Big 12 quarterbacks are this year. Yeah. But I was impressed with that showing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, historically, Vanderbilt has lost these games. They schedule these tougher non-conference opponents, sometimes at home.
Mm-hmm.
And in years past, Vanderbilt just hasn't been able to put it together early in the season. So I think Mason really has his team competing. The QB Shermer, he's more of a game manager. He doesn't make the critical mistake, but he does really good just getting first downs and not making crucial turnovers. So definitely Vanderbilt's defense was top notch. And Kansas State, you had them going to the Big 12 championship, which is still within reach.
Yeah.
This is a non-conference game,
right.
So it doesn't factor in, but they weren't able to get that victory. So we'll see as the season goes on. Is this more of a indicator for Vanderbilt being a good team, or Kansas State possibly struggling in the Big 12? So we'll see. We'll see on that.
Yeah, like I said, that's one good thing about these conference matchups. Non-conference is the fact that a loss is not going to hurt you that much. Both these teams are in great conferences that if they take care of business and wait after this game, they're going to be in a very good position to get a very good bowl game. If not, maybe get some opportunity to get New Year's Six bowls, or maybe even the championship series. So we'll see more to come. Not saying either of these teams will, but the door is still open. I'll say that.
Right. Let's talk about another SEC matchup. This one was a tough one to pick last week. Kentucky traveling to South Carolina. Big news for South Carolina for this game.
Yeah, this was talking about the game. I thought it was a very good game. Kentucky really. Let's start with Kentucky. They really impressed me on the defensive side of the ball. Early in that game, they legitimately stopped South Carolina's offense. And then about midway through the game, both offenses started figuring out each other's defense, and they were able to do some things. Deebo Samuel had another great game until he got hurt. And that's where him, and then also their tight end Hayden Hurst got hurt late in the game as well. So South Carolina had 2 injuries that, unfortunately, the Deebo Samuel injury, he's out for the year. And that's one of the guys I was really high on South Carolina because of him on offense. He's probably one of the more dynamic players in the league, and with him being out on this offense, you can tell those a huge difference in their ability. And I don't, they're going to be struggling without him for sure.
Yeah, disappointing finish for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, Kentucky needed some momentum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were struggling against Eastern Kentucky last week, and people were talking about that game. Not even this one being a blowout at home with South Carolina. So very impressed with Kentucky. They showed good grit to be able to eke that victory out, and disappointing for Debo.
Yeah, for
Samuel.
sure. Yeah, I'd say that. But again, with Kentucky moving forward, we'll talk about it later. I really did think that they found something that's going to be moving forward to be good for them.
Right.
Some definite momentum.
Right. Let's stay in the SEC. The Mississippi State LSU, that proved to have a surprising outcome. Jonathan, talk about that game.
Yeah. Did LSU even show up for that game? I mean, there was a team put out there for LSU, but Mississippi State from the start just dominated this game. I've not seen a defense step up at the level they've been playing, step up like that for a big game, and they won in big fashion.
Yeah, Mississippi State, I think it was under talked about. Todd Grantham, former Georgia and Louisville defensive coordinator, he's really turned that Mississippi State defense around quickly too.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a great output. I mean, obviously the offense and Nick Fitzgerald had a good output, but very surprising. I'm not quite sold on Mississippi State. I've liked what I've seen from them. We'll talk more about their game against Georgia. They've got another big one coming up in Athens. We'll preview that one later in the show. Let's talk about the marquee matchup. Louisville hosting Clemson last week. Jonathan, how did that one end up finishing?
Same thing, I guess. Clemson's defense, if we weren't sure if they were for real yet, I think everyone knows that this might be Clemson's best defense they've had in a long time. Maybe better than last year's defense. They completely shut Louisville down from the start. It was almost like they took what they figured out the second half of the game last year and just used it as the game plan for this year, continued where they left off. Because remember, that game was back and forth early in the game, and Clemson made some plays late in the game that separated last year. But it looked like the second half of last year from the start. I was really surprised and impressed.
Right. Continue to be impressed with Clemson. I think they're probably the hottest team in college football right now. Coming off an Auburn victory at home and then going to Louisville and just completely shutting them down, that's something to be noted. They lost a lot of talent from last year, but yet they seem like they're just picked up from where they were last year at the end of the season.
Yeah, so a lot of those questions on offense, they found their offense this week for sure against Louisville.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to our Week 3 awards. Jonathan, who was your Offensive Player of the Week?
Yeah, I was almost going to go with John Kelly and his performance against Florida, but I decided to go with the guy, every week we do these picks, and I usually have one or two guys I've looked at. Every week the third guy has been this guy, Luke Falk. I'm going to finally give him the nod. If anything, it's because he's been there all 3 weeks. But he was 37-49 and had 396 yards passing and 6 touchdowns against Oregon State. No interceptions. He had that's pretty good numbers. So I'm going to give it to Luke Falk for an effort continuing every week.
Yeah, how would you like to be a receiver for Washington State? I mean, you got a really good chance of getting the ball there.
Just don't listen to the coach. Don't let aliens and everything else.
Yeah. My Offensive Player of the Week, had to give the nod to Nick Fitzgerald. Like Jonathan, he's been on my list the last couple weeks. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and nearly 300 yards of total offense against an LSU defense that LSU always puts out a really good defense.
And Arden Key was back for them, too.
And Arden Key was back for the game. Yeah, you would have thought that they would have just completely shut Mississippi State down, but not so. Nick Fitzgerald, he's been one of the top offensive players dating back to the last half of the season up to this point in the season. So good for him. What about defense? Who you got for defense?
this guy, his numbers alone, but the fact that he did it, I've got Devontae Downs, linebacker from Cal. Not only did they get that big upset win at home against Ole Miss, which surprised both of us, but on his own, he had 14 tackles. He had 3 of them for loss, and he had 2 sacks. And then also he had early in the game where Ole Miss was about to go in to score, take a 2-score lead. He got an interception that was huge in keeping Ole Miss off the board there, which helped fuel that momentum to get things going for that big upset. So I've got Devontae Downs.
Yeah, you talk about Cal. I mean, they've had a couple of really good wins to start the season. They started out going to North Carolina and winning, and then they get that huge victory
Yeah.
because of his performance against Ole Miss.
Mhm.
So very impressive out of Cal. For me, I've got Jeffrey Simmons. I'm staying with Mississippi State. I was just really impressed with their victory against LSU. He had 2 tackles for loss, 2 QB hurries. I think he played a very big factor in Etling not getting comfortable and making the throws last week. So got to give the nod to him and Mississippi State. Great game last week. Let's move on. Next, freshman of the week. Who you got?
I'm going to go with another big upset. I'm going to go with Tim Hart from Memphis. He, if you know me, I watched that early game. Memphis had UCLA. They're hosting UCLA, and they got the big upset there. And Tim Hart was a big part of that. Late in the game, he had a big interception. They returned 60 yards for a touchdown, and that put Memphis back up 10, and they ended up winning that game by 3. So he was a big part of that. So I'm going to give it to Tim Hart. And, you know, I'm wondering right now, I don't think Mississippi State had a freshman play much of any crucial role. So it's not a Mississippi State player good for you, is it, for freshman?
Yeah, can't give the nod to Mississippi State there, but I do have. I'm staying in the SEC.
Okay.
Felipe Franks, no doubt, didn't have the great offensive output. He had 2 passing TDs, 1 interception, 18 for 28, just over 200 yards passing. So, you know, probably a quarter of it coming on that last throw, maybe even more. But I'm giving it to him just because Florida has had so much trouble on offense, and it's been a quarterback carousel, it seems like, the last few years. We've talked about that in previous shows, but just him being able to have the poise to make that throw and get the job done, got to give it to him. Might not get to call his name at all the rest of the season, so I'm going to give it to him on that pass. Certainly gave Florida momentum. So, Jonathan, we were talking before the show, but it's hard to believe that over 25% of the games are done. We've only got 75% of this season left.
As long as that's or on this side, I'm just going to be okay.
Yeah.
As soon as that number gets below.
Yeah, once we get below 50%, we're just going to have to soak up all the college football that we can. But what we wanted to do was give our first quarter assessment on a couple of different categories. So the first category was a team that surprised you so far this season. Jonathan, who you got?
I'm going to go with keeping the theme of the show. I think early on, you got to be impressed with Mississippi State early on. You know, we talked about how early in the preseason we thought, you know, them and Missouri were the East and West teams that had the most unknowns about them because of the fact they're going to have a great offense, but both of them had terrible defenses that they needed to address.
Yeah.
And you spoke about earlier what Simmons and Leo Lewis have done on the field for Mississippi State. They've turned this into a SEC caliber defense. And I've been really impressed with their improvement this year. And we already knew Nick Fitzgerald was going to have another good year and move forward, but it's most surprising that they're able to fix the defense as well as they have so far. There's still a lot of football play, and Mississippi State's got, you know, in the West, they've only played one of their West opponents. So there's several opportunities for them to do great or bust. But through week 3, I'm going to have to go Mississippi State.
Yeah, definitely impressed with them. For me, continuing on, we've already talked about these things even earlier on in the show, but Clemson can't help but be impressed. They lose, you know, Deshaun Watson. They lose Mike Williams from last year. They lose running backs. It just doesn't even matter. They lose, you know, top defensive players from that national title team, and it's almost as if they didn't lose anybody. I mean, they've had impressive wins. I think they're the hottest team in college football right now. I said that earlier. I'm sticking by that. And, I mean, I view them as the #1 team right now, even better than Alabama. So they have
Sure.
definitely surprised me. I mentioned Cal earlier as well. They've had some surprising wins, but the most surprising for me has been Clemson thus far through Week 3's games.
Yep.
Now let's talk about it, maybe a disappointing team or somebody who hasn't quite met expectations for you, Jonathan. Who would you say?
I'm gonna have to go with Ohio State here.
Ohio State.
They struggled on defense against Illinois Week 1, and then Oklahoma coming in the second half of their game and completely dominating them. And the way JT Barrett looks like, he's that JT Barrett we thought was behind him. That JT Barrett that at 1 minute he's gonna make a great play, then he's gonna turn to look like he's a true freshman, and he makes a bonehead move. He's still just so inconsistent that we thought, we both are very high on him and is poised to have such a great final year at Ohio State. And we just haven't seen that guy we were expecting to see out of him. So I'm going to have to go with Ohio State.
Right. I mean, we thought going into that Oklahoma game that he would be a difference in Ohio State winning that game. Wow. What a difference a couple of weeks makes. Disappointing team for me. Got to go with Louisville. They returned Lamar Jackson, reigning Heisman Trophy winner. You talk about all the talent that they have on offense, and then they throw it, just not even show up to last week's game at home against Clemson. I mean, through 3 games, I can't think of a team that's been more disappointing than them. They were poised to be a playoff team and be at the top of the ACC, but not so much early on this year. So, not saying that can't change, but right now they're certainly been a disappointment.
Yeah, we say just through Week 3. We're just talking about where we thought people would be early on and not perform so far. So yeah, we still got a ton of football. You said 75%. So
yeah, there's plenty of time to right the ship for Louisville. Let's talk about something that we don't like to talk about. We think that the media kind of overblows this talk of coaches getting replaced or getting fired. Possibly in the middle of the season. But Jonathan, just for this, I mean, we got to talk about some of these things. They've been kind of hot topics in college football thus far this year. But who's a coach do you think this hot seat is getting warmer and warmer?
Yeah, to me, it's got to be based on how we're going to go about this. But the hottest seat, I didn't agree with it even in a few weeks ago, but it's got to be Kevin Sumlin with everything going on.
Yeah.
There's been so much negative going on away from football with Kevin Sumlin that I have to wonder at that point, is there a point where he doesn't care anymore himself? I know he's got a job to do, and we're relying on 20-something-year-olds to keep a 40-year-old having a job. But at the same time, it's all the negative spin-off, like boosters getting involved, all that stuff going on, and even the racial threats he's been getting at Texas A&M. It's not needed in college football, but it's happening. And at some point, I just feel like maybe he might be the best person to leave his current position, because I feel like it's that point. It'd probably be for his best interest at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, that's true. They lost. I think a lot of the rumblings came from that first loss against UCLA. It was the second largest comeback in college football history.
Yeah.
I think the fans were definitely not happy about that. But for me, the coach that's probably on the hottest seat right now is Mike Riley at Nebraska. The athletic director, after that loss to Northern Illinois last week, said he was angry and frustrated. So I think if we're going to go with the most obvious choice, we got to go with the AD, who said he's willing to do anything to help the team win football games.
Yeah, that's not good.
And, after just 3 games, it's kind of surprising that he would be that bold. But Nebraska has shown a history of firing and letting go coaches that were really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in their history. The AD is openly talking about it. Watch out, Mike Riley.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something positive.
Yeah.
What about a player that's maybe outperformed your expectations going into the season thus far?
Let's say, because we're gonna go with outperforming the Heisman talk. You would say, if I had to give the Heisman today, it's got to be Mayfield for Oklahoma. You know, he's thrown for over 1,000 yards already, has 10 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And we're talking preseason, even going to the Ohio State game is, yeah, he's an awesome quarterback, but who's he going to throw it to? Seems like he's found new weapons, and he's looking just like he was last year, if not better. And so I'll give it to him early on.
Yeah, you talk about the Heisman moment too,
Yeah.
that a lot of voters look for.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield, I mean, what's a better than avenging the loss from last year
In the shoe.
in the shoe? I mean, that you can't think of a bigger moment. And then planting the flag in the middle of the field, people won't forget that.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, good pick there. I like that one. He was also a Heisman finalist last year.
Yeah,
So-
with one of his receivers.
With one of his
So maybe
receivers.
we should start looking at who his top receiver is. Maybe
Maybe a repeat of last year. For me, I'm staying in the Big 12. We mentioned that the Big 12 QBs have impressed thus far, but Mason Rudolph been really high on him the last week or so. So far, he's got 13 touchdowns, 11 of those passing, just one interception, over 1,100 passing yards, 72% completion percentage. I mean, those are highly impressive numbers. Interesting, they have a tough matchup going against TCU this week at home.
Yeah.
So I think if we're looking for Heisman moments for Mason Rudolph, you know, he has a potential one this week. But he's really impressed me so far this year. And if I had to pick somebody today, I would pick him over anybody else. So good for him. We'll see if he performs in the top games. That'll be the defining moment for him.
Yep.
All right, next we've got some games to watch this week, Jonathan. A lot of big news. Jonathan and I are Auburn fans. We've been kind of outspoken about it, but lots of news coming out of Auburn this
Yeah.
week. First of which was Sean White was arrested early Sunday morning on public intoxication charges. And we found out on Monday that he was dismissed from the team by Gus Malzahn.
Mhm.
So that's huge for Auburn's QB depth.
Yeah.
They do have some other players, but that leaves Auburn with just 2 scholarship QBs on their roster.
Mhm.
There was some other news out of Auburn as well this week.
Yeah, I would say on top of that, we got I'm sure you've seen on ESPN that former number 1 player, 5-star defensive end Byron Cowart is leaving the program. You know, we were talking about it before the game, for the show, that, you know, as much as they're making a big deal about it, and there's a lot of chatter about, you know, there's been frustration with the Auburn offense. There's been a lot of frustration in general with Auburn this year, and that a lot of people are trying to use this as another platform to get Gus Malzahn fired because of the fact that he wasn't able to develop the number 1 player in the country. And it was like being a defensive end. I know we talked about it before, and it never looked like to us that, you know, some players can come in after their freshman year maybe and then get caught up to the speed of the game. But for Cowart, I don't think we ever really saw that out of him. Granted, he's coming in the first 2 years he's on the team, he's behind Carl Lawson, who is already making waves in the NFL as a rookie. So he's behind him. They move him to defensive tackle. And then this year we've got guys stepping up like Derek Brown, and then you've got Marlon Davis, and Auburn's consistently known as a great defensive line.
Yeah.
Usually that is Auburn's strength on the defensive side, is the line. And he just was never able to find his spot. And people are trying to, oh, he just never made the effort. But look at some of the product Auburn's produced the last few years that he's been on the team. It's kind of hard for anyone to find snaps in there. So the fact he was getting 10 snaps a game is saying a lot when you've got the level of talent he's playing with.
Right.
That was one of the biggest reasons why he said he was leaving, was only getting 10 snaps, and he feels he's better than that. And then also he did mention something about his mom being sick, which there's some I have a little bit of speculation just because of the fact that I'm not saying he's lying or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But some of when he came down to his actual statement, there was a lot of inconsistent messages within it. Somehow she had surgery recently, and he didn't even really know much about it. But yet, I would think if it was my mom and she had surgery, I would know what was going on no matter what I'm doing in life. And he was saying, oh, she just didn't want to know. So there's some questions there I have personally, but other than that, it's still Hopefully everything gets better with his mom, and I hope we wish him the best.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So those were two negative news items earlier this week from Auburn, but good news today.
Yeah.
Kerryon Johnson, running back, he's been out the last 2 games for Auburn,
Mhm.
and they've kind of struggled on offense. They've definitely missed him. He's going to be back for their game against Missouri
Much
this
needed.
week. So, but comes at a much needed time for Auburn. But Jonathan, funny thing about this game is the Auburn Missouri game is Auburn's defense is probably one of the best in the country.
Yeah.
And Missouri's offense is probably one of the best in the country. So you got best defense versus one of the better offenses. So those two matchups are interesting. And then you've got on the other side, Missouri's defense has been horrible this year. In fact, they've already fired their defensive coordinator.
Mhm.
And then last week they got Purdue hung 35 on them. And then Auburn's offense has kind of struggled. Jared Stidham to get up and running.
With a new wave of how things are going at Auburn.
So it's a battle this week of best versus best, and then worst versus worst. So what's going to give? I mean, is it going to be an offensive game or a defensive game? What do you think?
I guess when in doubt in the SEC, you go with the better defense. At the end of the day, there's some questions that said some of the quality of opponents. You say as good as Missouri's offenses, South Carolina was able to handle them pretty well. And I would say Auburn's defense is an upgraded version of South Carolina. I mean, Will Muschamp technically built this Auburn offense we're seeing still. Kevin
Right.
Still's definitely molded it into his own, but this is literally the same defense they saw 2 weeks ago, which can be good for them, but better players on the field. Too.
Right.
So I'm going to give it to Auburn, a close one. The reason I'm going to say it's as close as it's actually the first time Auburn's ever gone to Missouri.
Yeah.
And they're making a big deal about that on Missouri's side. So Battle of the Tigers, I got the good guys.
Yeah, I think the Tigers will win that game. Yeah.
Scapegoat.
Let's talk about another game. This is in the ACC this week. Florida State and NC State. What should we be watching for in that game?
This is gonna be very interesting because this is gonna be the first game Florida State's played since the showdown against Bama.
That's
With
wow.
with everything going
That was a
on.
lifetime ago.
I know, right? We've had what 2 or 3 storms even in Florida we have to since then. But yeah, so Florida State's finally taking the field, which will be good for all those fans. Everything going on. This was everything going with Miami as well. They didn't play last week, even though Florida did. So I'm interested to see what kind of role they give James Blackman. This is going to be his first start as a true freshman. The key to the game, I think, will be NC State's defense and how they do against Cam Akers, another true freshman. That I feel like they're going to have to rely on him because he's got more experience of the two and running the ball to take some of the pressure off of Blackman. So I think it'll be an interesting test to see early on for them. I would say we were both impressed with NC State against South Carolina early in the year. So I think it's going to be a great matchup for them to get Blackman's feet wet and see what they're going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State, they've had plenty of time, to say the least, to prepare for this game. But, Florida State's defense really kept them in that game against Alabama in the first game of the season, and they very much impressed. We've talked a lot about Clemson's defense, Auburn's, Mississippi State's in this show. But FSU's defense, we just haven't seen a lot of them. But they could potentially one game, and they could potentially be the best defense in college football. So it'd be interesting to see that against NC State. Blackman, the initial reports out of Tallahassee are that he's wowing the players and the coaches. So we'll see if he wows the fans on Saturday. That game will be in Tallahassee.
Good for them with that too.
Yeah, that'll be good. Or is that game? Maybe that game's at NC State.
No, it's at Florida State.
It's at Florida State. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So we'll see how Blackman performs. They could be. This could be a rebuilding year. But you talk about freshman QB, freshman running back.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be good going forward. So.
Another thing to look at is how their offensive line responds, too, because I know after that game, a lot of the linemen are putting the blame on Francois' injury on them. I know I talked about it in the game, but individually in conversation with reporters, they've taken ownership and was saying it was their fault
Hmm.
and that they're going to do better for Blackman and moving forward. So let's see how they do there.
Yeah, definitely something to watch for. In light, we talked about Vandy's huge win against Kansas State last week. They actually host Alabama this week. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this one?
My thought is right after that Kansas State game, one of Vandy's players made it clear that they were ready for Bama. And then even Derek Mason, which made in the moment, apparently had a comment made earlier this week too that he said he's got something for Bama. So let's see where their money where their mouth is. I'm excited. It could be a really good game. I'm still not overly impressed with Bama offensively.
Yeah.
So going against a very good Vandy defense, this could be a really good game.
Yeah.
A lot closer than what most Bama fans are going to be expecting for sure.
Yeah, Alabama, they haven't hit their stride on offense or defense yet. They gave up, I think, I read where it's the most points under a Nick Saban coach team against a non-conference opponent in Colorado State last week. So, I mean, stats like that, those can be kind of unnerving. This is Alabama's first SEC game as well. I think Alabama will take care of it, but like you said, I mean, I think maybe it has potential to be a closer game, and it's at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So interesting there. We'll definitely keep our eyes on that one. What about USC versus Cal?
Yeah, so we've been talking really highly about Cal impressing us last week, but I still like USC. They had a very tough fight against Texas this week. And, I think that in a lot of ways they had a lot they left on the board that they can take take it as a loss from a work on themselves week. I think USC, they showed already once this year during games that they've been able to make corrections and do well when they see they do wrong. They made adjustments, and I expect them to do that this week as they prepare for Cal. I feel like it's going to be a week where USC works on USC, and we're going to see a lot better USC team this week than last week.
Yeah, I think Texas is definitely a better opponent than a lot of people gave them credit for after that first loss. So they definitely competed last week. But yeah, I'm with you. I like USC to rebound this week against Cal. That used to be the marquee matchup in the Pac-12 conference. So it's funny how that game has kind of lost its luster. But Cal has proved to be a decent team this year, and it should be a good matchup.
That Laird kid, he didn't have many yards, but he had a touchdown in that win against Ole Miss. So.
Yeah, Cal lost their best running back going into that game, and Laird ended up pulling out another touchdown. So good for him. All right, it's time for our Week 4 picks. If you're picking with us on College Pick'em, be sure to make your picks before the games start on Saturday. The first game of the week is Texas A&M. In Arkansas, playing at Jerry's World in Arlington. How do you have that one finishing, Jonathan?
Speaking of it being in Jerry's World, if not everyone knows, Jerry Jones is actually an alum from Arkansas and played for Arkansas. And in honor of that, Arkansas is actually wearing cowboy uniforms of their colors. So like where instead of the star, it's the hawk, and instead of the blue stripes, red. So they're pretty cool. If you look online, I'll share it on Facebook. They're kind of cool uniforms. But that being said, being Jerry's World, I think this is one of those interesting matchups this week. Texas A&M, we're still trying to figure out what they're going to be this year. They've been struggling. So with that being said, I like Arkansas on this one because I know they can still run the ball well. So I like Arkansas in Jerry's World.
Yeah, I got Arkansas on this one too. I just don't think that Texas A&M can keep pace with Arkansas. I don't think Arkansas has a great offense, but I like the way that their offense is trending more than Texas A&M's. And I definitely think that after Arkansas shut down TCU's offense in that Week 2 game, I like to see them do similar things. So I'm going Arkansas too in that one. Let's talk about our next game. Another Texas matchup, Texas Tech and Houston. Jonathan, who do you have winning that game?
I think it's going to be a very good game. I think the key to this game is going to come down to how effective can Ed Oliver be with Houston's defensive line against Texas Tech and get pressure on Texas Tech's quarterback Shinenek? Last week Shinenek passed for over 540 yards and he had 6 touchdowns. So with that being said, I've got Texas Tech and Shinenek making the deep ball a few times and winning by a couple scores.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm hoping for offensive shootout in this game. I don't know about you, Jonathan, but
those are always fun in Big 12.
yeah. Kyle Allen for the Houston quarterback. He's a former Texas A&M quarterback. He's performed pretty well this season. Just through 2 games, he's at over 500 passing yards, completing 86% of his passes. I got to give the nod to him. I like him as a QB better than Texas Tech's quarterback. But at the end of the day, if it's going to be close, why not go with the home team? So it's going to be played at Houston. So I've got Houston winning that one. We'll see how that one shapes out.
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about our next game, Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah. All right. Well, this one was an interesting pick. I went back for it for a short time, but I really like Duke this year. And so I really like their offense. They play pretty solid defense, and I like Duke in this one.
Yeah, it's funny because Duke for years hasn't been just consistent. They've had periods where they've been good, but they haven't been consistent. So I'm hesitant to just completely sell out on the Duke bandwagon. But I got to pick Duke in this game as well. It's going to be played at North Carolina, so it's Duke's first road game of the season. But their defense and offense have proved to be pretty good this year. North Carolina, I think they're still a good team. They've had some close losses to Louisville and Cal to begin the season. But so definitely a close game. Got to give the nod to Duke, but wouldn't be surprised if North Carolina won this game. Fair to say?
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right, we've got another big matchup in the SEC. Mississippi State, they're leaped into the top 25, number 17 team against the number 11 Georgia Bulldogs in Athens. Jonathan, who you got in this one?
This one's another toss-up. I really like how well Jake Fromm has played for Georgia.
Yep.
And so their defense has definitely been what we thought they were going to be. But, interesting storyline that Eason's practicing this week. And with that being said, there could be some little bit of question there. If he's available to go Saturday, is Fromm going to be more looking over his shoulder half the time, worrying about if I make one bad play, am I going to lose this job? Or if he's ready to go, is Eason just going to get the job back right away? There's a little bit of question there if he's healthy enough to play. But with that being said, I'm going to go with Mississippi State here. Upset. I think they're riding high off that big win in Stark Vegas, and I don't think it was a fluke. I really like, you mentioned Simmons being great. I really like Leo Lewis as their linebacker. I just really think they've got things together that they're going to prove last week wasn't a fluke. And I'm going to take Mississippi State with the upset in Athens.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about this game before, and this is really the deciding game for me whether I'm going to jump on the Mississippi State bandwagon.
Well, you're not already?
I'm not already on there. I'm pretty close, but I just haven't completely sold out yet. For Mississippi State, I still need to see one more quality win from them. This could be that game.
Yeah.
But Nick Fitzgerald, the defense, no doubt they have a great team this year. But Georgia, they've proven to have a great defense. I was really impressed with that Notre Dame victory in South Bend. Jake Fromm, you mentioned him. We don't talk about their running backs, but Nick Chubb and Michelle, I mean, man, those guys are top notch. So I like Georgia at home in this game. Again, wouldn't be surprised if Mississippi State pulled the upset, and if they do, I'll be jumping on the bandwagon. But I've got one more week of Georgia, and they were my pick in the SEC West or East, but they were actually both of our picks in the SEC East. So I like that trend to continue. We'll see what happens this week.
Oh, yeah. I say definitely.
All right, next game on our list is Penn State traveling to Iowa.
This one, I've been impressed early on with Iowa. Iowa's started off really well. I would say they had a very tough test against Iowa State early in the year already.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good win for them as far as a team. But I just like this offense, Penn State, much better. as they continue to impress, and yet they haven't really played the competition yet, like you were talking about earlier on. But I like Penn State in this one.
Yeah, I think this game has potential to be a little bit closer than we may think, but Penn State, they can pretty much coast through their schedule until late October when they face Michigan and Ohio State. Penn State just has one of the best offenses in college football, and their defense has impressed me this year. They haven't given up too many points, so I like Penn State as well. We both agree on that one. Let's move on to another SEC matchup. Florida traveling to Kentucky. Jonathan, who you got in that one?
This one, I was just really impressed with Kentucky last week, and I feel like both teams had one of those games where they can take a lot from it positively in this matchup. But I just like the second half. I just saw a difference in that Kentucky team as far as their momentum, their excitement. They got a little bit of a swagger that I think is going to help them going into a home game against Florida. And anytime you have a big school like Florida come to these smaller SEC East teams, Florida always seems to get their best. Whether it's years past with Vandy, Kentucky, even Tennessee. Florida may have a long time ruled the SEC East. They always get their toughest games against these lower East teams. So I expect that trend to continue, and I got Kentucky beating them at home.
Interesting. Okay, so jumping off the South Carolina bandwagon, got to pick another team.
Just for a week.
Just for 1 week. Yeah, it's funny. I would have noted that I did pick Kentucky to compete and possibly finish second in the East. So just want that to be noted again somewhere on tape. But I'm actually sticking with Florida. This is another game for me. I picked against Florida last week when they were playing Tennessee, and it came back to burn me. I think Florida has one of the better defenses in college football. They just don't have the offense, and that slows me down in picking them. But this one is a coin flip for me. Got to go with the better defense in this game. I think that's Florida. We'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Another top-notch game. This one was hard to pick for me. I don't know about you, Jonathan, but Notre Dame traveling to East Lansing, Michigan State.
Yeah.
Who you got?
I agree. This was another tough one just because of the fact that, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen much from Michigan State yet. They just haven't done anything to really set out early on.
Right.
Not saying they're not a good team, but they just haven't had that moment where you go, okay, so this is what Michigan State's going to look like this year. I've still got some questions with them. Where Notre Dame, they had a very tough loss to Georgia game. It was a very tough loss, and when they took a turn around last week, they were struggling in a lot of areas that they made improvements on last week. You can tell they went straight to where they struggled, and they made corrections. And I like Notre Dame in this one because I like Wimbush. I like their running back as well. I just think they've got a little more on offense that's going to give them the nod in this one.
Yeah, really tough game for me to pick, but I'm going to give the nod to Michigan State here, playing at home. Like you said, I haven't really seen anything that impressed me from them. I think Notre Dame is the better team going into this game, but when you play on the road in college football, a bunch of young guys, it's hard to know what you're going to get. And so I've got Michigan State winning this game. I think it's an upset. I think it's really close, possibly a last-second field goal or something to that effect. So we'll see how that one shapes out. That one was a hard one to pick. Washington traveling to Boulder, Colorado. Who you got?
I got Washington. I would say Jake Browning's left off exactly where he went this year. The biggest question of this game for me is Colorado going to be dumb enough to kick it to Pettis? Last week he tied the record for kick returns for a touchdown at 8. So Colorado kick to him at your own risk, I guess. So that's my biggest question in this game.
Yeah, rematch of last year's Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
People forget, but Colorado had a very surprising season last year. Finished 10-3. Washington ended up thumping them 41-10. And that propelled them into the playoff last year.
Yeah, they needed that big one at the end of the year.
They did. That was the deciding factor. So rematch there. I don't think it's any contest this year, although Colorado is 3-0. Got to give Washington the nod in this game.
Right, for sure.
Yep. All right, next on our list is another Pac-12 matchup, UCLA traveling to Stanford. Jonathan, who do you have in that game?
This one, it's really which UCLA is going to show up. I mean, we at times, or you get the UCLA that was the fourth quarter against Texas A&M. If it's that UCLA, I got UCLA in this one. But I have a feeling we're going to see the UCLA we saw last week, which was the team that was the first three quarters against Texas A&M, where Josh Rosen looked average. Their offensive line struggled against Memphis' defensive line. Yeah, they ended up being a little bit of a shootout. That was just because they're able to make some big plays here and there to keep it close. But I just don't know what we're going to get from UCLA with that. I know what I'm getting with Stanford. I'm going to get a very good defense, a very good O-line push, and running the ball. I don't see Stanford great in any areas, but I see them good across the board. And with that, I'm going to go with Stanford.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Stanford. Stanford's lost their last two ball games, but it's been against quality opponents. They lost to USC. It was kind of a closer game for most of the game. And then they lost to San Diego State, who's proven to be a good team this year. They're in the top 25 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Stanford, the running back Love, he already has 500 yards rushing, 5 TDs. Kellen Chris, the QB, he's proved to be able to manage the offense well. So I like them better than I like UCLA. I think UCLA, they've kind of lucked out in some of their games, especially that first one against Texas A&M. So I'm going Stanford in that one, sticking with Stanford through this game. Now let's talk about our marquee matchup. This is TCU traveling to Stillwater and Oklahoma State. Jonathan, how do you think that shapes out?
I got burned early in the year for picking against my pick in TCU. I'm not gonna do it again. As long as I keep winning, I was sticking with TCU. I like their defense here. They've got weapons on offense. I've been pressed every week. It seems Kenny Hill, whoever he calls himself, he seems to make another big play you don't expect from him every week. And I don't see them stopping Jason Rudolph, but this is going to be their first real test. And I think their defense is good enough that they're going to slow him down enough that they're going to be able to score enough points to win this game. So I like TCU in a close but high-scoring game a little bit. So I got the Horned Frogs.
That's a really good pick. I really like that pick. Not so fast, my friend. I'm picking Oklahoma State in this game. I think you can kind of tell why I'm doing that. Mason Rudolph, great QB. Oklahoma State really hasn't had a good opponent to face this year. I think TCU is definitely that opponent. The game's being played at Oklahoma State, so I think that'll factor into the game. But I really like Oklahoma State's offense. I don't think TCU's defense will be able to contain them. And so I've got Oklahoma State just for that reason. I think it's definitely going to be a closer game, though. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma State, I'm regretting not picking them to go to the Big 12 championship at this point. But so I've got them. We'll see how that game shapes out. But
to be noted, I said they're just going to slow him down enough to outscore them.
Okay.
Not stop him.
All right.
There's a difference in the two.
Let it be noted. All right. Well, that's all that we have for you guys this week. We appreciate you joining in. And we'd like for you to join with us in picking the games on the Pick'em. So check our Facebook page for more information on that. And with that being said, that's all that we have. We will review the games from this week, next week, and have more college football talk. So we'll see you guys. Take care.
Later.